Here's a quick tutorial to how to set up outgoing webhooks from Salesforce. So if you navigate to the setup within Salesforce, go on the left side here, and there's two things we need to set up. One is the actual trigger of the webhook, so the information is getting sent across to the webhook, and then the flow, which is what is the trigger to actually send the webhook across to the information across to the webhook. So first, we're going to set up the webhook trigger. So this is what the information is going to get sent across. And so in here, we want to search outbound messaging. So if we go into outbound messages under the workflow actions, then in here, you can see I have a couple of them already set up, but I want to create a new one. So new outbound message. And then we are going to select the information that we want to send across. So when you're setting up a trigger, you have to send it from a specific object. So in this case, I want a project. I want to send information from a project through the webhook. And then we want to name the webhook. So in this case, the trigger is whenever the project name changes. So I'm trying to call this project name changes. And the unique ID, you can just ignore this because it's just for the API, and we're not going to use that right now. And then the other piece that you need to know is this right here. So this is the input URL. So this is where you're going to put your webhook link. So because I have Integromat set up, I created a webhook here. I'm going to copy that webhook link, go back into Salesforce, and paste that endpoint URL right here. And then these fields down here, this is the information that's getting sent across to the webhook. By default, it'll only have the ID of the whatever object that you're sending or the object that you're looking at. So in this case, since it's the project object, is only going to send the ID of the project. Typically, you only need the ID because once you send the webhook across, once you send the information across to the webhook, if you have the ID, you can then request the rest of the information through whatever system you're using. So like since I'm using Integromat or Make, I'm sending the information across to Make. It's getting the ID of the project, and then I'm going to get a request from here from Salesforce to give me the rest of the information about the project. So in this case, I'm going to leave it as ID, and then I'm going to click Save. And that's all you need to do for the outbound messaging. So now that we have the trigger ready to go, now we need to go and make sure that the information gets sent. Now we need to set the trigger internally in Salesforce so that when the product name changes, we send information to this through this webhook. So for that, we're going to search flow, and we want to go to the process automation flows. Quick note here, you can only access this if you have the enterprise level of Salesforce. If you have anything less than enterprise level, you won't be able to do these integrations, the flow integrations. So if we go to flow, and in here you can see a couple different flows that I already have built out. This is where you're setting up in internal automations and integrations. So this is where you're having an internal trigger with a specific action. So we want to create a new flow. And how the flows work is it basically, oh, actually, before I talk about that, when we're setting up a new flow, there's different options that you can set up. Some of them are like you can create user tutorials and all that. We don't want to do that. We only want to have an internal trigger so that we don't notify anybody or anything. We just want to send the webhook across. So we want the record triggered flow. Okay, hit create. And then in here, we have to set the trigger. So what happens or what needs to happen for this to get sent across? So in this case, I want the object project. I want to watch the object project, and I want it to trigger when those different options here, when a record is created, when a record is updated, created or updated, and a record is deleted. So in this case, since I want to only trigger it once the product name changes, I want to set a record is updated. And then in here, this is really important, set the entry conditions. If you set the conditions to none, anytime anything in that project is changed at all, it'll send the webhook across. This is not what I want. I only want to send across when the name of the project gets changed. So if I go under the conditions, I want to set this to all conditions are met. So this is it's only gonna fire off when all conditions are met. So I can set the conditions once I select this here. So I want the field. I want to watch the field, which is the field name. So if I search project, search name, you'll be able to see the project name. I want the operator to be is changed. So when name is changed, and I want the value to be true. So it's going to ask when the field name changes and the value and it changes and is correct, then it will send the value across. This last one here is a little bit confusing because this is used for other things, but it still needs to be filled out. So you always want to make sure that that is true. So it's equal to yes. So if name is changed equals to yes, then we'll send the webhook across. So make sure that's true. And then down here at the very bottom, you can ignore this here. Down here at the very bottom is fast field updates versus actions and related records. Just keep it actions and related records. Fast field updates is where if they change the name in any of the objects, it'll immediately send it out versus when they have to click save. So when you're updating fields in Salesforce, it'll ask you if you want to save it, and you just make sure that you are saving it each time. So I want this to only trigger when somebody actually saves a product, because I don't want a bunch of webhooks getting sent across if they're in the middle of typing and they haven't finished typing it out yet. So only actions and related records, which get sent out when it's actually saved. So done. So now we have our trigger. So this gets sent out. This is what's going to happen. Now I want the action. Let's slow down here to interaction. Click action. I want the action to be the webhook. So on the left side here, we want to scroll down to outbound message. And then in outbound message, we're now going to go search that one webhook that we set up. In this case, project name changes. So at the very top there, since I just created it, select that. And then we create another name. So I'm just going to repeat the name here, project name changes. And then I click done. Now it's all set up. So once the object project name changes, then it will send the webhook. So a couple of things before we get this finished up is we make sure this is saved. So save the whole operation here. So we got to name the flow, which again is just project name changes. In this case, I'm going to little arrow saying project name changes, or actually then send project name changes, send webhook as the name of the flow, just so we know what this does. Save. Now, once it's been saved, this is where I slipped up originally, is you have to actually activate it. So there's a button up here called Activate. So before you activate it, none of this will go into action. So I'll click Activate. Now it's saved. All right, so now everything's good to go. So whenever I change a record project record name in Salesforce, it'll automatically send the webhook across to wherever you have the webhook linked to. So in this case, I have Integromat set up. It'll send the webhook with the project ID for the specific scenario.